What I'm about to show you will leave you absolutely livid at the sheer arrogance and complete disconnect of Anthony Albanese. This man, who's supposed to represent all Australians, just walked into a room full of hardworking farmers and delivered the most tone-deaf, insulting performance in recent political history. We're talking about a Prime Minister so out of touch with rural Australia that he might as well be living on Mars. And when Sky News host Danica De Giorgio called him out for his reckless energy policies, the humiliation was so brutal, so utterly devastating, that Labour spin doctors are probably working overtime trying to bury this footage. The Bush Summit in Ballarat was supposed to be Anthony Albanese's moment to connect with regional Australia, to show that Labour actually cares about the people who feed our nation and keep our communities running. Instead, what we witnessed was a political massacre that exposed everything wrong with this government's priorities. This wasn't just a bad day at the office, this was a complete meltdown that revealed the true face of Labour's contempt for rural Australians. Here's what really happened behind the scenes that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. Albanese walked into that room thinking he could charm his way through another photo opportunity, throw around some buzzwords about renewable energy transition, and walk out with his reputation intact. What he got instead was a reality check so harsh, so unforgiving, that it left him visibly shaken and stumbling through responses that made him look like a deer caught in headlights. The moment that defined this entire disaster came when a farmer, a real Australian who actually works for a living, asked Albanese directly about protecting regional communities during the energy transition. This should have been an easy question for any competent leader. Instead, Albanese's response was so catastrophically bad that it instantly became a political weapon that will be used against him for years to come. There are a couple of things that we have to recognize, Albanese began, and you could already sense the condescension dripping from every word. One is that there hasn't been a new coal-fired power station begun this century. That's just the truth, and there hasn't been any regulation stopping that. There is still nothing stopping that. Nothing stopping that? Are you kidding me? This is the same government that's been systematically destroying Australia's energy security with their obsessive pursuit of renewable fantasies. This is the same Prime Minister whose policies have made it virtually impossible for anyone to even consider building reliable baseload power generation. The sheer audacity of this statement left the entire room stunned into silence. But here's where Danica De Giorgio absolutely destroyed him with surgical precision. She didn't just report on what happened, she called out the fundamental dishonesty of Albanese's entire approach to energy policy. The Bush fought back today against Anthony Albanese's reckless energy policies and the damage caused by Labour's net zero magic carpet ride, she declared, and those words hit Albanese like a political sledgehammer. Magic carpet ride. That phrase is going to haunt Labour for years because it perfectly captures the fairy tale thinking that drives this government's approach to energy policy. While real Australians are struggling with skyrocketing electricity bills and blackout warnings, Albanese and his inner city elites are living in a fantasy world where renewable energy will magically solve all our problems without any consequences for ordinary families. The farmers in that room weren't buying what Albanese was selling, and their reaction was pure gold. These are people who understand how the real world works, who know that you can't run tractors on solar panels and wind turbines. They've watched their electricity bills explode while being lectured about the benefits of Labour's energy transition. They've seen reliable power stations shut down while being promised that intermittent renewables will somehow keep the lights on. What made Albanese's performance even more pathetic was his complete inability to address the real concerns being raised. When farmers talked about the impact of rising energy costs on their operations, he responded with political talking points about century-old power station statistics. When they raised legitimate questions about energy reliability, he deflected with meaningless bureaucratic nonsense that showed he has no idea what he's talking about. The visual of Albanese standing there, clearly uncomfortable and increasingly defensive, while facing down a room full of angry farmers who aren't impressed by his spin, perfectly captures everything wrong with this government's approach to regional Australia. This is a Prime Minister who's more comfortable at inner-city wine bars than rural community halls, and it showed in every awkward moment of his train wreck performance. Danica De Giorgio's commentary wasn't just brilliant journalism, it was a public service announcement that exposed the Emperor's new clothes. Her description of Labour's net zero magic carpet ride perfectly captured the delusional thinking that drives this government's policies. While Albanese talks about energy transitions and renewable targets, real Australians are dealing with the consequences of his ideological obsessions. The timing of this disaster couldn't be worse for Labour. With energy bills continuing to rise and reliability concerns growing across the country, Albanese needed to project competence and understanding. Instead, he delivered a masterclass in political incompetence that will be replayed endlessly by his opponents. This wasn't just a bad day, this was a career-defining moment that revealed fundamental weaknesses in his leadership. But the real story here isn't just about one disastrous appearance. This Bush Summit humiliation represents something much bigger: the complete breakdown of trust between Labour and regional Australia. These farmers didn't just disagree with Albanese's policies, they completely rejected his right to lecture them about energy while his government's decisions are destroying their livelihoods. The contrast between Albanese's scripted talking points and the raw emotion of farmers dealing with real-world consequences was stark and devastating. While he talked about theoretical benefits of renewable energy, they talked about the practical reality of trying to run businesses when electricity costs are out of control and supply is unreliable. This wasn't a political debate, this was reality colliding with ideology, and ideology lost badly. What makes this even more infuriating is Albanese's obvious belief that he could smooth-talk his way through legitimate concerns with political doublespeak. His claim that nothing is stopping new coal-fired power stations while his government actively works to prevent exactly that kind of development shows a level of political dishonesty that would make a used car salesman blush. The farmers' reaction to this nonsense was immediate and brutal. You could see the eye rolls, hear the murmurs of disgust, and feel the temperature in the room drop as Albanese's credibility evaporated in real time. These are people who deal with facts, not political spin, and they weren't about to let the Prime Minister get away with obvious deceptions about his government's anti-coal policies. Danica De Giorgio's role in exposing this disaster cannot be overstated. While other journalists might have soft-pedaled Albanese's failures or found ways to spin his performance positively, she called it exactly what it was: the complete humiliation that revealed the disconnection between Labour's policies and rural Australian realities. Her magic carpet ride comment will go down as one of the most perfectly crafted political zingers in recent memory. The aftermath of this Bush Summit disaster is already reverberating through political circles. Labour strategists are reportedly in damage control mode, trying to figure out how to explain away their leader's catastrophic performance. Opposition politicians are already cutting attack ads using footage from this train wreck, and farmers across Australia are sharing clips of Albanese's tone-deaf responses as evidence of why this government cannot be trusted with rural policy. What's particularly devastating about this whole episode is how it exposed Albanese's complete inability to connect with ordinary Australians outside his inner-city bubble. When faced with genuine concerns from hard-working farmers, he didn't show empathy or understanding. He delivered political lectures that demonstrated his fundamental disconnection from the people he's supposed to serve. The energy policy discussion that triggered this meltdown represents one of the most important issues facing Australia today. Rural communities are bearing the brunt of Labour's renewable energy obsession while being told that their concerns don't matter. When the Prime Minister can't even acknowledge the real impacts of his policies on the people most affected by them, it reveals a level of political arrogance that should terrify every Australian. This Bush Summit humiliation will be remembered as the moment when Anthony Albanese's pretense of caring about regional Australia was completely shattered. His condescending attitude, combined with his obvious discomfort when challenged by real Australians, showed a leader who's more interested in pursuing ideological agendas than addressing the legitimate concerns of the people who elected him. The broader implications of this disaster extend far beyond one bad day in Ballarat. This performance revealed fundamental problems with Labour's approach to governance: the arrogance, the disconnection from reality, and the belief that political spin can substitute for actual solutions. When farmers reject your energy policies this emphatically, it's not a communication problem, it's a policy problem. Danica De Giorgio's devastating commentary about Labour's magic carpet ride approach to net zero policies perfectly encapsulated the fantasy thinking that drives this government. While Albanese talks about smooth transitions and renewable benefits, real Australians are dealing with the harsh reality of his ideological experiments. The collision between political theory and practical reality was brutal, and Albanese lost decisively. If you thought tonight's story was wild, trust me, what happens next will blow your mind. So don't stop now. Click on the video right here on your screen to continue the chaos, the drama, and the inside scoop only we deliver. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and join the Australian News CC family where the real stories come to life. See you in the next one.